Hi, in going over questions 1 and 2 on page 795, which is the number 3 in the Unit 10 packet on World War II, we'll talk about some of the people on this screen. Once again, some pictures from my World Wars PowerPoint. All right, well, appeasing is giving in to demands to avoid a larger conflict. And in this case, we have the Munich Conference that was held in September of 1938 when 4 leaders including Edward Daladier of France, Neville Chamberlain, who's shown in the upper left, of Great Britain, Adolf Hitler of Germany, and Benito Mussolini of Italy. They got together and appeased Germany by giving control to Germany of the Sudetenland. All right. The Axis powers consisted of a group known as JIG, Japan, Italy, Germany. The Allied powers consisted of a group, and this is just a few, but I remember it as BUS, Britain, US, and Soviet Union. And of course, the Allied powers had lots of other countries as well: France, the Soviet Union, China, etc. Stalin and Hitler had signed a non-aggression act on August 23rd of 1939. They agreed not to attack each other. They agreed to divide Poland between them. All right. At this point in time, Franklin Roosevelt, who's in the lower left there, he helped to get passed through Congress the Lend-Lease Act in March of 1941, which gave the U.S. The U.S. passed this act to appropriate $7 billion for ships, planes, tanks for non-access countries. And they even extended this to the Soviet Union. The United States is really worried about Stalin and suspicious and worried about communism, but they're more worried about the fascist buildup. And the fascist, of course, blind loyalty to the state, importance of the state, not the individual. There's kind of a cool symbol on the first page of chapter 26 that talks about fascism. It's got a picture of a fascist on that page. Yeah. Italy had expanded, of course, into Ethiopia with this idea of fascism. But one way or the other, we have the leader of the Munich Conference, Neville Chamberlain, who passes away. He has cancer. And before he dies, though, Winston Churchill is elected prime minister. And he disagreed with the Munich Pact, and he had disagreed with appeasement given in to Hitler. It would only encourage Hitler to seize more land. I think he saw the writing on the wall there. All right. The French thought, under the leadership of a guy named Charles de Gaulle, thought they could build a line of defenses along the French border with Germany. They called it the Maginot Line. In World War I, that might have worked to build some defenses there, trenches and barbed wire lines. But in World War II, the technology had improved so much through the Blitzkrieg, lightning war, that the Maginot Line was just blown over and was a non-event, not that helpful. I wanted to make sure FDR and Churchill were up on the screen so that I could mention about how Roosevelt and Churchill had a secret meeting in Newfoundland in August of 1941, and they signed a pledge to not pursue territorial expansion after World War II. The U.S. wasn't even in World War II yet, but they signed the Atlantic Charter. FDR, he has polio. He's traveling to all these different places. I mean, that's challenging, I got to say. In the Atlantic Charter, it said that every nation has a right to choose its own form of government. You should have freedom of international trade, equal access of all countries to raw materials. Once the war ended, aggressor nations would be disarmed, and all nations could work together to rid the world of fear and poverty. These are just some of the highlights of the Atlantic Charter. And then I do have a small picture of Hideki Tojo up there, too. He's the Minister of War in 1941. He became the Prime Minister of Japan, who committed his nation to expansion as part of the Greater East Asia Company. And they wanted property, and they wanted to embolden more power in Japan. All right. Now, Hideki Tojo was the Minister of War, but the actual hereditary leader of Japan was a guy named, you can't even really say his name, but his name is Hirohito. Emperor Hirohito. Okay, thanks. Just a few comments.